to be drafting our basic skirt block. So once again, we'll rule a straight line. Don't get tired of ruling straight lines. We'll call that line our center front line. And the center front will be placed on fold. The same explanation I gave you when we did this for the bodice block is exactly the same for the skirt block, because the human body is bilateral. Do you remember? What we have on the left side is the same thing as what we have on the right side. So imagine that this line is evenly dividing the body into two, right? So in that case, if we are doing one half of the front, we would have to place on fold, so that when we're done cutting, we can have the equal or the full front, left and the right hand side. So you pick any point on this line, we'll mark it 0, and you will rule a straight horizontal line at that point. And we'll call that line the waistline, right? And then you've determined the full length of your skirt. While you were taking your skirt measurements, right, you would have taken the measurement of the full length of your skirt. So let's assume that this is the full length of our skirt. You will mark it out there, and then you will rule a straight horizontal line one more time, and we'll call that line the hem. That's the hem line. Using your hip depth, you're going to rule the hip line. So let's assume that our hip depth is somewhere here at 5.5, right? So placing my tape 0 on the waistline, I'll mark 5.5 on the center front line. And then using our ruler, we'll rule a straight horizontal line, and we'll call that line the hip line. So we have the waistline, the hip line, and the hem. Now, your waist circumference measurements. While taking the waist circumference measurement for a skirt, remember to always tighten the tape, right? So this is where I want my skirt to be positioned on my body, right? Instead of just taking a loose measurement at the waistline like that, you would want to tighten it a bit. Why do we do this? Unlike the bodice, where the bodies have the support of the shoulder to hang, right? Your blouse have the support of your shoulder to hang on. The skirt doesn't have such luxury. So the only way your skirt can fit on your body without falling off is when it hangs tightly on the waistline. So don't forget to tighten the waist circumference measurement when you are taking your measure. You come down to the hip line. Your hip circumference divided into 4. Let's assume your hip circumference is 40 inches. Divided into 4 will be 10 inches. So you come to your hip line, place your tape at the center front line, and mark the 10 inches at the hip line. You will come to the waistline and repeat the same thing. You will mark the same 10 inches on the waistline, so that when you connect the points, you would have a straight line. You will connect this straight line all the way down to the hem of the skirt as well. So we have a straight line from the hip all the way to the waist and the hem. And the width of this line is the hip circumference divided into 4. Okay. So now to give fittings to this skirt, we are going to find the difference between the hip circumference and the waist circumference divided into 4. So if your hip circumference is 40 and your waist circumference is 30, we're going to find the difference, which is 10 inches, and divide that into 4, and we'll have 2.5 inches. Okay, so out of this 2.5 inches, you're going to take out 1 inch. 2.5 minus 1 inch. You take out that 1 inch, and you use the 1 inch to slant the side. So you place your tape 1 inch and mark inwards. And then using a ruler, you connect from that mark to the hip to slant the side. So if you take out 1 inch out of 2.5 inches, we are going to be left with 1.5. So we're going to use that 1.5 to impute a waist dart in this skirt. So to impute the waist dart, you first of all need to mark your bust distance or your bust spans after dividing into 2. The bust distance or the bust spans is the distance from one nipple to the other. Now you might be wondering, why are we using the bust distance on a skirt just as we did on the bodice, right? Do we have the bust on the skirt? No. The reason why we use the bust distance is because the bust is the very focal point on the body of a woman, right? And by using the bust distance, it enables us to create balance while making a garment for a woman. So we are going to divide the 1.5 inches equally, such that our bust distance is at the center of 1.5. If you divide 1.5 inch into 2, it's 0.75. So the distance from here to there is 0.75, and from here to there is 0.75, such that when you sum it all up, we have 1.5 inch. Now, the length of our dart, it's advisable for the length of your skirt, for your waist dart on the skirt, to be between 4 inches to 5 inches in length. I know some people who even take it all the way down to the waistline, and their skirt still comes out looking nice, right? But according to the textbooks, it's okay for the length of your skirt's waist dart to be between 4 to 5 inches. So coming to the waistline, you mark 4 inches downwards, and then connect your bust spans down to that point, or your bust distance down to that point, such that from there to there was 3.5 inches, and from here to here has to be 3.5 inches as well. If it isn't, then it means this line is not a straight line, and you want it to be a straight line, so your darts will not be crooked, right? So after that, connect the 2 dart legs to that point, and there you have it. You have your waist dart on your skirt. Now, as this is on the board, it can be worn. It can be cut as a pattern and worn, right? But if you want this skirt to be penciled or to be tapered, then you would have to come here and slant the side. You have to come here and slant the side in. Now, how do you know how much to slant such that you're going to get rid of this? It is the hem circumference measurement we took when we were taking our measurements for the skirts. The hem circumference divided into 4. Whatever the result is, placing your tape at center front, you would mark it, and then you would use that as a guide to slant the side. So we are done with the front of the skirt block. So we are going to go over to the back of the skirt block. So to make the back block, we are going to rule a line once again, and we'll call that line the center back line. The center back line will not be placed on fold, just like we did in front, because we need to impute a zip at the center back, right? Now you pick a point on that line and mark 0. And then on the line also, you mark the full length of your skirt. So let's assume that this is the full length of your skirt. So at 0, you are going to rule out a straight horizontal line. And at the full length of your skirt, you rule another straight horizontal line. At 0, we'll call the waistline. And then using the full length of your skirt as a guide, we'll rule another straight line and call it the hem. Using your hip depth, we are going to also get the hip line. So placing your tape on the center back line, you're going to mark the hip depth. And then using the ruler, you rule a vertical rather a horizontal line, and that's the hip line. So just like we did in front, we're going to divide our hip circumference into 4. Assuming the hip circumference is 40, divided into 4 will be 10. So we'll mark 10 inches on the hip line. We're going to mark the same 10 inches on the waistline, and the same 10 inches on the hem. And then using the ruler, we're going to connect the points to form a straight line. So to give fittings to this one more time, we are going to calculate the dart excess, which is the hip circumference minus the waist circumference divided into 4. So if the hip circumference is 40 and the waist is 30, divided into 4 will give us 2.5 inches. Now, we'll use 2.5 inches to slant the side. We'll use 0.5, I beg your pardon. We'll use 0.5 inch to slant the side. And using the ruler, we'll connect it to the hip line. So if we take out 0.5 inch from 2.5 to slant the side, we'll be left with 2 inches. Out of 2 inches, we'll take out another 0.5 to slant center back. Now remember, center back cannot be a straight line. Besides the shape of the vertebrae at the back, you also have your butt, the buttocks at the back, which is curving. So we can't have a straight line running at center back. So I've taken out 0.5 from 2 inches to slant the side. And using a ruler, I'm going to connect from that point to the hip line. So it means I'm left with 1.5 dart excess. 1.5 inch dart excess. So from the marking here, which we use to slant center back, you will place your tape and mark your bust distance. If your bust distance is 7 inches, 7 inches divided by 2 is 3.5. So you divide your bust distance into 2 and mark it there on the waistline. So we have 1.5 inch left as our dart excess. So we are going to shed evenly such that our bust span or bust distance remains at the center of the marking. Now I said it's nice if your the length of your waist dart for a skirt is 4 to 5 inches. So you mark 4 inches downwards, roll a line from your bust distance down to that point, so it's a straight line, right? And then connect the 2 points to form your waist dart. So there you have it. The calculation we did here to get 2.5, we used 0.5 to slant the side, 0.5 to contour center back, and what was left was 1.5, which we used to form the waist dart. So like I explained in the front block, this can be worn. But if you want your skirt to be penciled, if you want your skirt to taper a bit as it's approaching the hem, then using your hem circumference, after dividing into 4, whatever reading you have, you would use it to slant the hem. So if your hem circumference was, say, 30 inches, you divide into 4 and mark on the hemline so that you can slant the side. Now, in a fitted skirt like this, you would need to have a slit at the center back, so it's easy for movement, for you to move your legs when you wear the skirt. So you decide on how high you want your slit to be. If you want your slit to be 7 inches high from the hem, so you come from the hem and you mark out how high you want your skirt to, your slit to be. So if you want an overlapping slit, you will have to mark 2.5 inch outward such that the distance from here to there is 2.5 inches, and you bring it straight down to the hem. And this is what your block would look like for an overlapping slitted skirt. But if you want the open slit, then you will just leave your block like this, just as it is. And then while sewing, you decide on where you will stop your stitching to make the opening for your slit.